argue a dream or reality. We are all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Come in and join us for the moment we call now. Rise up, join in, raise the whole vibration.
Hey, how's it going? This is Michael Zinn with a special Marconics episode of the live stream of consciousness. I'm here with Robin Joy Landau, who is the Marconics practitioner for the the whole entire Northeast, right?
I'm not only a practitioner, I'm a master teacher for the Northeast, and as well as I'm also teaching in Florida.
Awesome, awesome. We're going to learn all about what Marconics is. We're going to learn all about the state of humanity, where we're at right now, because I think these conversations are important. You guys know I love to talk about this stuff. And here we go. We're here.
So I re-listened to our interview, and the things that you wanted to dive into was like the science of it, or and also, you know, you were very interested in that whole like the evolution and the light being stuff. And
well, I like the idea of what you sent over about talking about like fear and the current moment, right? The current moment that we're in. I think that's important. You know, I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Is to put this content out there so that people can just come across it and just be like, oh, I never heard of this. What is this? You know, and people are going to resonate with what they resonate with. You know, so Sarah Curley was my guest last night on the live show, and my story with Sarah Curley was, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I saw channelers on YouTube, you know, and they were talking about the Galactic Council and all of these things that I had no idea about. And it was a little out there for me, you know. It was like, I was like, okay, you know, I was always very accepting of everybody and never wanted to judge from somebody's experience, but I was like, okay, you know, it seemed a little like performance to me, some of the trance channeling, and, you know, it just wasn't for me. And then my friend Stephen Durante was hosting workshops for White Light Productions years ago, and he called me and he said, oh, I have this woman coming on, Sarah Curley, check out her YouTube video. So he sent me to her video and I watched it, and I don't think I'd seen channelers, but I don't think I had ever seen anybody speaking light language at that point. And I had an emotional response to it. And that was pretty significant to me. So I said, oh, I got to go see this woman in person, which I did. Again, I had an emotional response to it. I asked her if she would do a one-on-one, and we did a one-on-one, and we bartered, and we became friends, and I worked on some web stuff for her. And it just opened my mind and my perception of what it was about. And for me, to kind of clarify this all, is I see what you do, I see Reiki, I see tarot, I see all of these things as just individuals' connection to source and to energy. And it can be done with that, like it can be done with salt. People throw salt on the table and read salt, right? It's a totem, I think, that is, for that particular person, an energetic conduit. You know, that's how they can let go. That's how it makes sense to them. And so I think that's what my show is about, you know, giving everybody a platform to express that puzzle piece, you know, because, you know, Marconics may work for some people and it may work not, and it may be the savior for other people, you know, it may change someone's life completely, you know. And I think that's always been kind of my superpower, you know, like just being open to hearing and sharing, and even being like, oh, you know what, I know somebody who would like that, and then connecting people together,
right?
You know, so that they can ride that frequency wave. You
And
know?
what about your own, like, you know, I'm a big believer on we teach best what we need to learn most, right? Like you seem to be as like a seeker, and trying to also figure out, you know, what is this thing called life? You know, what is this? Why are we here?
Yeah.
And what does it all mean? You know, always asking about, you know, what is consciousness,
Right.
which is always evolving. I mean, I've been listening to your podcast, and everyone has a beautiful but just different perspective
Right.
of what that means to them. So,
Yeah.
it does, you know, and maybe some people have never really thought about what that is.
That's it.
And it's in that awareness that you start to, you know, perceive or maybe look through life through a different lens.
Right.
And,
Exactly.
you know, so I think that for yourself, your own journey is, you know, like you said, to get that emotional
For
response.
sure. Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said too. You know, people don't even think about it, right? Like what their connection to consciousness and what it even means. And I think that's even just posing that question, right? And getting someone to think about it, like, you know, when I wake up, what's happening? What is that being? Who's waking up? What's perceiving what? You know, like just that whole thing. And I think, you know, society has kind of stripped us away from that, even questioning that, even connecting to that, right? So like it's Stephen Durante always had this great expression called the hamster wheel, you know, and
After wheel?
the hamster wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the hamster wheel, and it's like that's what life is, right? Like life has been kind of created as this hamster wheel that you got to get on, and most people do, and I think a lot of people are, you know, with meditation, you know, and these kinds of basic practices that are really ancient, people are taking a pause and saying, wait a second, this isn't how it's supposed to be. You know, we're not supposed to be on this hamster wheel. We're supposed to be a community of human beings, you know, and, you know, not the current state of, you know, Democrats and Republicans and transsexuals and cis people and, you know, whatever the labels are that they're throwing at you. It seems to me very contrived to divide you. It seems like, you know, that's some sort of malevolent plan, and I feel like consciousness is the answer. Consciousness is the weapon against all of that.
Well, it's actually discernment.
Discernment, yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
discernment, because, you know, just to be aware of it is definitely the first step, but be able to discern those frequencies of what's false, you know, what the lies are, as opposed to what the truth
Sure,
is. And
sure.
of course, everyone's perception of truth is going to be different. And that's the, you know, as long as you're aligning to you at the Godhead, that's what Marconics is striving for, is to forget about the middleman,
Right.
no more channeling the angelics and the ascended masters, no more channeling any of, you know, your affiliations, whether you're Arcturian or Pleiadian or...
It's interesting that you're saying that, and I appreciate you listening to me talking about channelers the way I did, and now hearing kind of your opinion on it or your perception of it.
Right.
And I agree. I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine this morning about that. And for me, the idea of a spirit guide or channeling is opening up yourself to another aspect of yourself.
Well, that's the way it used to be.
Okay.
But it's no longer safe because of the free will zone being relaxed.
Okay.
There now are imposter spirits that are not on, that are not aligned with higher ascension, meaning we now have the ability to exit this matrix, right? And so,
I hope so.
but those beings that are still attached or invested in the older 3D paradigm, you have to understand that we are their food source. So for not to have us, part of that is taking away from their ability to continue on. So there are these imposter spirits that are here, that are guiding, and for many channelers who have been channeling these energetics or spirit guides. The problem is that we will be told 9 truths and 1 lie, and you won't be able to recognize the lie unless you discern, unless you flex that discernment muscle so that you can feel or sense that something feels off.
Right.
They're saying the right things, but energetically it doesn't feel
doesn't line up.
authentic.
Right.
And that's where we get into problems. So, and everyone has the right to choose. That's the whole point of being in a free will universe.
Sure.
But those that understand that there's more, those that have an understanding that we came in as volunteers and we just want to get home, and we've been trapped here because it's phase locked. Are we recording, by the way?
It's recording, yeah.
So we're phase locked here, meaning that we are limited to what we can pull in to be able to activate what is necessary for us to have a complete ascension cycle. And if you get caught under the grid, what's going to happen, it's going to be considered a failed ascension cycle, and you will just supernova, meaning you will eventually run out of the quantum energy that's necessary for the reincarnational cycle. And like a star, when it also runs out of quantum energy, you will then just get reabsorbed by source, which as far as Prime Creator is concerned, that's a valid experience.
Sure.
But then you have to start again as a new spark of essence, and then begin that whole cycle of being able to mature, to fill in a soul carrier, and then have your existence again. So it's not that the memories get lost, because that gets absorbed by source. It's just that Michael, the essence of who you are and all your incarnational cycles no longer exists as you. That's what the difference is.
Really, I never heard that before, as far as like your energy kind of terminating.
Well, that's because of, so in our previous conversation, I shared that the original sin was when we were in the Andromeda galaxy and the Lyran-Orion wars broke out because of ego out of balance. And when those grid systems got destroyed, the miasma, or the misfirings, came through a black hole and entered into our atmosphere that created the Milky Way galaxy and all the planets that exist here. And that miasma was what created the core of those planets.
Okay.
All right, so we started in a state of fall, right? So we were in Lyra, and then the Andromeda galaxy, having our experience as multidimensional superpower beings, right? And we were pretty awesome at that point. And then we fell, and then we ended up on in our Atlantean experience, right? The Atlantean Lemurian on Tara, and we were 5G going through the 6D corridor on our way to 7D. And then again, we abused our power, and then we fell back, into 3D.
Is that what's happening now? Are we in that cycle again?
Yes, because exactly, because it's a rinse and repeat. And the phase locking that I was talking about is because this universe was created in 10 base math, which is the inorganic matrix. So when you think about, as I shared in our conversation before, the Fibonacci spiral, or even the Kabbalah tree of life, which is also in base 10 math, it doesn't include 0 point, right? That zero field. And as a result of that, it doesn't include self, because in the dumbing down process, to be able to exist in the density and duality and polarity of 3D experience, our chakra systems were dumbed down and our light bodies were reduced, right? So when we talk about the light body, it's that auric field, and most 3D energy or healing modalities work with that 7 conical chakra system, those 7 individual chakras that have been nipped and capped, which create that shape, that trumpet shape. But that's not who we were when we were having our experience in Andromeda, our universe of origin. because the intervention was needed because we were not able to activate the spiritual DNA, and so the dumbing down was because we needed to incubate the light.
Okay.
And be able to get to that maturity. And so that's why the karma wheel was created and why the chakras were nipped. It wasn't done as punishment. It was done because we fell from grace and we had to learn through the karma wheel how and to begin again. And so when we talk about, you know, the evolution of man, starting out as that hairy barbarian and then matured into the 2.0 human template, which is that dumbed down chakra system. We've been here for eons of time, and in that time, the false light has been able to infiltrate and know where our weaknesses are and be able to use fear, the false frequency of fear, to be able to manipulate and control us.
Through ego.
Through the imbalanced ego.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because the ego is necessary. We're not, it's not about slaying it, but it's about being able to not have the ego in the driver's seat. Right? Because when the imbalanced ego is in the driver's seat, remember, the ego, it feeds off of our fear and it doesn't like change. So it will keep us in that discomfort because then it can manipulate us. Right? So
does the ego, sorry to interrupt, does
no,
the
that's
ego,
okay.
I guess, is the ego centered on self rather than the collective? Is that kind of?
Correct. So, and you know, the ego is separate from us. So the ego is what's controlled through the linear thinking mind. And so as the pineal and pituitary gland was calcified, we then weren't able to access, you know, those are organs that are supposed to be very plump. And with the calcification, it's been atrophied in a way. And as a result of that, we're only relying on the physical eyes, which have been it's very limited what we can actually see, and it's based off of this the hologram, right? This is just a hologram and it's an illusion, and if the ego mind is in the driver's seat, it can control how we perceive things. So once the pineal pituitary get decalcified and plump into those organs that they're meant to be, that then activates dormant DNA, which then will activate the galactic heart chakra, which is it's housed in the thymus gland, which then also allows the galactic chakras that are along the occipital to come online, and that creates a triad where we drop out of that linear thinking mind so that we can start to, it's our heart, it's our feeling, right? We're getting in that is able to then distinguish between that truth and what's the lie, because we haven't been taught to trust ourselves.
It's interesting that you're saying that, because I've been talking about and thinking a lot about lately, first of all, yes, the limitations that are immediately put on us as being human, right? In that language is the way that we communicate, and something, I guess, the thoughts that I've been having are the language of the universe is feeling, is emotion, is understanding, is experience, and I just find it interesting that you're saying that. Now, I just want to back up, and I'm not super familiar with what you're talking about, like these galactic wars and this really ancient, big history, right? That's related to the humans, like before we were human. I'm familiar with some of the stories about the Anunnaki and the slaves being slaves, and you were talking earlier to me about being food and all of that stuff. I'm vaguely familiar with that stuff. I'm not like, I don't study that stuff, and I probably should. But my question is, you were talking about these wars and before and how we came to Earth. Was that physical? Was that physical beings, or were those light beings? Was that like another
No, we were in physical form. So 9D is the lowest dimension where we can stay in form.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And above 90, it becomes more etheric. Although, you know, when you talk about, you know, the giants, you know, those beings that, you know, like the pantheon that came in as the first wave of when we fell from grace, they came in as very godlike beings. So you can imagine 9D, we were pretty awesome. I mean, we're in those higher realms, we're not male and female, or we're everything,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like the division happened when we fell, of the division of our sexes and
Right.
everything else.
Right.
So we were in form. So, you know, the word human is a very 3D concept. So, but we were in form, but it wasn't perceived. We can kind of go in and out of form, you know, at will. And so when we talk about the wars, the galactic wars were because there was a split of those that felt that we were mature enough or had the ability to have the keys to the universe, and those, you know, that didn't. And so the war is about technological evolution or the organic God realized evolution. And you can see that happening again. That's the split. And in 2018 was when this bifurcation split occurred. Those that are choosing the AI human cyborg hive mind evolution, and those that are choosing, like I shared, the God realized organic evolution, where you'll be able to not only go through linear time, but go up dimensionally. That's what's been missing. That's just to go back, two things I want to just point out is because we were phase locked, because this universe was created in 10-base math, we are limited. We're oscillating, right? We're oscillating, but we're just going, that's the rinse and repeat. That's the infinity sign. That infinity to what? Because we're limited. Our chakras in the dumbing down process, you know, they're spinning. Yes, they're spinning, but they're spinning this way and this way.
Right.
They're
Within
not able, it's a limited,
Yeah.
it's limited to what we can pull in because we're not able to go up that upward spiral, the
Right.
crystal spiral. And in the dumbing down process, we were disconnected from our source. Remember, there's you at source in every dimensional structure. So when healers say, source is directing me to do X, Y, and Z for you, right? The first question you should be asking is, which source is telling you that?
Right.
Right? Is it source that's under the grid, or is it source that's out of the grid? And some people are connecting to higher chakras, right? Like 28, 29 chakra, whatever chakra they're aligning to.
Right.
But that's not the same thing as connecting to the unified field, because that's what we were disconnected from. So with Marconics, what we're doing in the quantum recalibration is not only are we reconfiguring your light body to bring them back to their organic multidimensional state where there are a series of nesting spheres working together as a single unified organ, right? And increasing that spin rate, but you're also reconnected through your axiotonal system, which is like a meridian system that's off your body that connects you back to you at source through the galactic core. So the source that you came in with is in the 8th dimension, which happens to be the galactic core of the Milky Way galaxy. And it's that higher self that governed your experience while you've been having your 3D experience on the karma wheel, right? So that's you in the 8th dimension.
Okay.
But then, so once we connect that, when we consider that the galactic core, once you connect, once you raise your vibration high enough and sustain it, and that's a key word, is being able to sustain that, because many light workers are yo-yoing. Once you're able to align with that and sustain it, then you become, because the higher self in the 8th dimension is considered the oversoul. Once you align with that, you become your own oversoul. It's you with you, but you're not able to align with that if you're not connected back to you at that level of source, which means these energies that are intelligently designed, that are hitting the planet's surface to help us activate the dormant DNA, if you're not a vibrational match to that, you won't pull it in.
Right.
And then you're again talking about limiting your what you can activate and where you're ascending to.
Right.
If you can't activate that, then it's kind of, you're not living your potential.
Right.
And the other thing is about this communication. When you're talking about communication, Allison calls this the law of communication, where it comes in, those clairaudient and clairsentient, where you can see and hear.
Yeah.
We're beyond that now. Now it's coming in as a clear cognizant or clear it's coming in as a knowing and a seeing, hearing, feeling kind of way.
Yeah.
And that only can happen when the galactic chakras, like I mentioned in the thymus and through the occipital, where the well of knowing or the mouth of God comes online. And so that's why channeling, or and like I shared, everyone's coming in at a different inception point. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. But if you're choosing higher ascension, why go through the middleman if it's not needed? If you could connect to you at your own Godhead, who's at the penthouse level, that sees the bigger picture, why?
Right. It's interesting. So I remember when I first, started being surrounded by people who inspired these questions and could answer questions, or at least had their opinions, right? Because I always take everything with a grain of salt, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's your answer and that's your reality, and I'm going to see how it fits into my reality.
Exactly.
And well, okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate, and forgive me for a minute, but I totally get what you're saying about channeling and information, and it may or may not be valid.
It's not that it's not valid, it's just that we can't trust it anymore
Gotcha.
because of the imposter spirits that are mimicking frequency.
Okay.
And here's the thing, if you're not because of this bifurcation split, if you're not a match, the same energy is pouring down. The way it gets filtered through my field is going to be different than it gets filtered through your field.
Yeah.
Because I'm able to align with it from a higher vantage point. So I will be able to discern through my sort of truth, through my alpha chakra and omega chakra, right? The alpha chakra connects you to source, and the omega chakra is what keeps you grounded here, because we are here to have the human experience on the planet.
Sure.
But it's going to get filtered differently because of where I'm choosing to align to.
I gotcha.
So this law of communication, it has to come through with your choice of your alignment.
Right.
Because of the free will universe, the laws that are here.
You reminded me what I was going to say.
Wonderful.
So early on in my experiencing all of this stuff, I was told, in seeking my spirit guides, right? Like, who are my spirit guides? I don't experience a lot of the things that I hear about the same way that I hear about them. My connection is very unique to myself. But I was told by a few different people that I was my own spirit guide. And I had a spirit guide portrait done, and it looked like me, and I didn't understand that.
Because that's you at the oversoul
right.
level.
I didn't understand that at the time. I was like, I never even heard of that. What do you mean I'm my own spirit guide? Where's my angel? Where's Saint Michael? Where's whoever it was? But then I started to understand it, and I do feel like this incarnation of myself is attached to all of the other frequencies of myself.
Right, and we still have a team. We still have a team, your affiliates, who are you in your lineage, right?
Right.
But what we're saying is, don't align with just one.
Right.
It's you to you at the Godhead.
Right.
And that's where people are not trusting that they even have. They think they need to, pray to Mary, to pray to Jesus to get to God, or however it is that lineage.
Is this philosophy akin to the idea that we have all experienced existence as every being?
Well, we've done it all. So
Okay.
in the sense that we've lived out all the archetypes, we've been it all. We've come in as
Okay.
male and female.
Right.
We've been the victim, the victimizer,
Right. Right.
the saint,
Absolutely.
and
So,
the antagonist.
so the reason I'm asking is because I know a lot of people, and I feel like it is unfortunate. I feel like there are like these unfortunate implementations of spirituality, where somebody might be told, "Oh, you were Ra in a past existence," and not that that's not true, but when I'm saying like we all were Ra, so there's no ego that should be attached to that. Like, well, I was Ra because we've all experienced that.
Right. Well, we haven't all been Ra.
Okay.
Because it depends
That's
on
what I'm asking, yeah.
it depends on what your lineage is and
Okay.
where your universe of origin is, and whether you're Elohim or Seraphim or remember there are 12 original tribes that seeded this planet, and so we're all just an affiliation of those 12 tribes, and so depending on who you were. But what we're saying is, whether or not you were Ra or any other ascended being, don't attach to it, because it's just one experience in that.
Right.
Now it's coming in as bundles, and so it's you at the Godhead and everything else that's in between, and you're only merging with those aspects of you that are also choosing higher ascension. And that's where you're right, the ego can get very misplaced if we want to all feel important,
Right.
and we all want that feeling of worthiness.
Right.
But truly, none of it really matters on that level, because it's just for the richness of the experience.
Right.
And once you integrate those aspects of you, the knowledge and experience, along with the healing and rehabilitation that's necessary, happens through our own chakra system, which are considered the stargates.
Right.
And that's what makes us so special, because remember, the angelics are not Christed beings. They don't come in form. They don't have the chakra systems that's needed to be able to go into those higher realms. So if there are angelic affiliates in your lineage that are not choosing higher ascension, that are not choosing to come in to heal and rehabilitate, they're going to try to manipulate you to let them be your oversoul, and they will take over the soul carrier.
And there's a malevolent agenda?
Well, yes, there is, because remember I said this, there's a split. Those that are choosing the AI technological
Sure.
agenda, and those that are choosing the organic.
Sure.
Remember, the angelics have been trapped here just like we were, because they had a failed ascension cycle when Venus grid system got destroyed. And they came in, yes, to be our guides, but along the way they've been manipulated to think that they can go on if they can take over the soul carrier. But understand that the 3D version of the planet that is now in the lower bandwidths of that 4G corridor, right? Because we've all moved up. So those of us that are aligning to the AI technological, they're in those lower gradients of the 4G corridor. Those that are choosing the organic are in the higher gradients of the 4G corridor. And if you are choosing that, that is going to eventually go on, but it's inevitable that it will supernova, but no one knows when. And that's why they're manipulating with this technology to be able to, first of all, prevent the activation of the spiritual DNA so that they have more souls that are feeding that agenda. And then they're also trying to manipulate with Merkaba technology to prolong when the end time would be for the destruction of that system.
So I'm wondering now, I'm just responding to what you're saying.
Yep.
Where we are with technology, you're feeling that it's not a good thing?
Well, listen, medical advancement, technology can be a wonderful thing. And when we were on Tara, we had very advanced technology that was kind of run by, crystal energy, right? But crystal energy doesn't work the same way here as it did when we were on a fifth dimensional planet.
Right.
And so we're not saying that technology is bad. It's this technology that's trying to create a hive mind, that's trying to manipulate the way you think and the way you shop
Right.
and the way that you
So
consume.
the algorithms that are built
That
to
is where
manipulate.
you right.
Yeah.
And so
I
we're
see.
not
Yeah.
saying listen,
Yeah, yeah. Yep,
without or
So it's the way that some people are using technology.
exactly
Yeah,
because they're not thinking
corporations
for
and-
themselves.
right.
They're being they're believing. Listen, I know you have in your feed, and then all of a sudden you end up, 2 in the morning shopping for things that you're like, why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Because you feel you need it or whatever.
Yeah.
And that and it's infiltrated subtly in the beginning, right? You can
Yeah.
even see now they're doing AI enhancements on photos, and then you're like, something feels weird about
it
that.
It definitely feels weird. Some of the ways
Right.
that it's being implemented. I'm fascinated it because I've always been into technology like cameras and equipment and tools. So I'm fascinated as a tool, but I'm also very aware of the implications of it for humanity. I think I think you're right. I think the next big split and confrontation is going to be humanists, people who don't want anything to do with having a chip put in them, or having one a digital currency and all of these things, versus the people who were like, well, this is going to make everything easier. You know what I mean?
Well, that's right, and and that's a choice. People, those that say, just tell me what to do, and I'll,
Right.
and that's why even the medical,
Sure.
just give me a pill and make it go away. And people don't want to do the work,
Right.
and there is
And
some
that's how they get
assembly
taken advantage of.
required,
Yeah.
right? And there's some assembly required for this,
Yeah.
and you got to put some skin in the game. This is not a magic pill in any shape or form.
Yeah.
And Marconics came in as a plan B when it was seen that we weren't ready. When 2012 hit, the big great shift of, December 21st, 2012 was the date that humanity chose for this great shift from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. That's what was going on. A precession of the equinox as the planet progressed around all the constellations and repositioned herself on the galactic plane. It was known. This was known for centuries.
So Marconics was kind of planned.
It came in as a plan B when it was
As a plan B,
as
okay.
a plan.
Gotcha.
And so.
And is that the ultimate goal? Is that like the ultimate?
Well, that's off the table now. So we're not.
Oh.
This is now an individual by choice.
Interesting.
Ascension. Like this. You have to choose this. So this is not the global style of ascension is no longer
Wow.
available to us. So now everyone has to choose this, and there are requirements that need to be met to be able to achieve higher ascension. And it's not just about clearing karma and density, and you need at least 51% cleared to get through the 4D corridor. To get from 3 into 5, you have to clear at least 51% of your karma, which is what occurs during the quantum recalibration of the Marconics procedure, which is a one and done. So when you're recalibrated, we uncap the chakras, we pull off that mucus plug that has been kept us phase locked. So as the chakras begin to blossom into the spheres and work as that series of nesting spheres as a unified single organ, 51% of your karma is pulled out, but that doesn't mean it's not a magic bullet. There's no spiritual bypassing. You still need to go through your linear progression of learning your lessons,
Gotcha.
Right? Because otherwise, again, you won't be able to sustain that frequency. But then you still have to clear that other 49% to be able to exit the matrix. So whether that takes you 1 lifetime or 200 lifetimes, does it matter? As long as you are aligned with you at at the Godhead,
Right.
you in at that eighth dimension where you came in with, to return back to who you were,
Right.
that it doesn't really matter. So
So that's the idea of a life contract, kind of, right? Like
right, it is. Remember, everyone has the ability to do this, but not everyone's choosing it, because a lot of people are just being lazy, or they don't have the awareness, or remember, because of the veil of amnesia, we forgot why we came here. We forgot that we came in as volunteers to assist a planet in her ascension.
Right.
And what's different about this ascension cycle is we get to ascend with her, in the meat suit, with our memories intact, which is what was never was able to achieve before.
So that's not off the table. That's still
No, but you have, right,
you
each
have to
person
individually,
has to choose this.
not as a collective.
Right, and
Wow.
and to go back to why were we phase locked? Why were we not able to achieve this? Why wouldn't we be able to go from the galactic core of this universal structure in the Milky Way galaxy back to the universal structure, or the galactic core of the universal structure of where we began, right, in that Andromeda? And that's because it's a mismatch, because the higher self, or the oversoul that we came with in the galactic core, which is in the eighth dimension here, is in Andromeda, it's in the ninth dimension, the galactic core. So it's not an easy just transfer from one universal structure to another. It requires us to align with the arc, with the rainbow bridge, as many people refer that to. And in order to do that, you need to be able to align with that that universal structure to be able to pull down the frequencies to activate the DNA so that you become a match for that.
So that rainbow bridge literally is kind of like the not the, I don't want to say barrier, but the in between of realms.
That's right.
Right.
And remember what I said at the beginning, the reason why those Lyran-Orion wars started was because there was a split between who thought that we were mature enough to be able to have the keys of the universe and who weren't.
Right.
And so not everyone is, we can't just give the keys out to everyone.
So I was saying that so the rainbow bridge is literally that boundary between the human, or the 3D rather, and because our pets go over the rainbow bridge too, but between the 3D and other realms.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the point is to be able to get to our point of origin, right? Because in an organic, healthy matrix, we were supposed to come in, gather the information, and be able to kind of bungee cord back out to be able to report back to Prime Creator to give that information. But because of the phase locking, and again, it wasn't done as punishment, it was done because we needed time to incubate the light, because just like a spaceship that would want to leave the atmosphere, if the spaceship wasn't in integrity, it would fry.
Right.
Same with us. We are not able to access those stargates and portals without destroying the biological vehicle. And so people that are claiming to be able to access these portals and stargates, it's still considered an unsuccessful ascension, because what was missing were the magnetics, the mother arc energies, what we call, the Christosophia, right? So the Christos is the electrical, which is considered, that linear progression, the rod, and then the magnetics, or the mother arc energies, the feminine energies, would be the vertical axis that would be able to go up the spiral of dimensionalized time, right? And that's
Okay.
what was missing from the planet's surface. The magnetics were actually hidden in the core of the planets, which what gave us our gravity. And the electrics were on the planet's surface, which is why this has been a very patriarchal society for this last 26,000 year cycle. But now when we talk about the return of the divine feminine, it's been misconstrued in our in our society to think that it's not this goddessy energy that it's been talked about in the spiritual community. It's
Right.
about the Mother Ark energy coming back in so that we can have that hierogamic union of the masculine and feminine in that multidimensional kundalini that begins to
Interesting.
turn
I don't
back
think
on.
I ever heard of that description of the masculine energy being more of the electrical and the feminine being more of the magnetic.
Oh yeah, that's always well. We yeah, that's how it's described. Even those of us that work with in the healing, with healing, that the feminine side has always been known on the left side, and the masculine was on the right side. But actually, on the other side, and the other side of the matrix, it's reversed. So as these electrical and magnetics are coming in, the feminine is coming in on the right side and the masculine is coming in on the left side. Because remember what I said, the split occurred when we fell from grace, and that's where the division of sexuality came in.
Yeah, I think
In
that
the higher realms,
even
it's
when you say
both.
men and women, I think that we have such a limited perception of what that even means, right? Like, because it's masculine and feminine is much, goes way beyond what we think of as men and women in physical form.
Right, because it's only been split here, and where there's a lot of reversal currents that are going on. There's all this confusion, and this is the false fear, the artificial fear that I was talking about. That's creating a greater division, right? There's a great divide that's occurring, whether they stop all social events or gender confusion,
Right.
and and everything else. There's a division that's trying to separate, man from man, brother from brother,
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
father from son, mother from
Right.
daughter. It's a division that the beings, that the avaricious being, that are trying to keep us in this state of fear of division. And part of it are these reversal currents, and a lot of AI is trying to manipulate with this technology to create like static or a barrier, and to prevent the spiritual DNA from activating.
Wow. So what do we do?
Well, you raise your vibration.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yep.
And we raise our vibration, but we have to sustain it. We
Okay.
can't keep yo-yoing. And that's what a lot of these modalities, Reiki is a wonderful, beautiful energy healing modality. The problem is you get a session, you feel great, and then you go back into your 3D life where there's
Hamster
the
wheel.
density, and then the hamster wheel,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then you start absorbing that, and then you power down. Marconics came in we're in the business of helping people understand, be aware of where the fear is, what your programs and patterns are, to be able to rise above it, to clear that static or cobwebs, as I see it, to be able to just become aware, have higher states of consciousness, to be able to discern through your sort of truth between that alpha and omega chakra, so that you can say, you know what, this was my truth before, but it's not my something feels different. It's
Right.
not my truth anymore.
Right.
And now I'm seeing through things through another lens. And you can see this, as you raise your vibration, what happens is you become more neutral. And that is really what it is. It's about observing it and saying, you know what, this is not my circus, it's not my monkeys.
Right.
And if you raise your vibration high enough, then you're not succumbing to what you're observing in the
Right.
sense of all this chaos.
Right. It's interesting you're saying that, because I'm all about energy. I'm all about frequency. That those are the basic elements of existence, right? And I was thinking about it this morning when I was getting dressed, because I'm usually like neutral. Like I'm not into bright colors and things like that, and I've never have been. I'm always into just like neutral. Neutral, and I realized that was a reflection of my frequency. That it was like, I didn't go with those other frequencies, the colors and the whatever, the vibrances. That it was just my frequency, just my nature to be neutral, and I mean that with color, with what I wear, but also with kind of my philosophies and my sensibilities of division, right? Like I don't usually side with one side. You know, I usually see both sides, and I'm usually able to be like, I feel you, but I feel you. You know what I mean? And so
but
it's
now,
interesting that you're
but
talking
now you
about.
need to make a choice.
Right.
You know, now it's about being neutral so that you're not triggered. You know, in the same way. It's good to be triggered because that's what's going on when you get these activations. You're being triggered, and you know, to clear the karma, you have to shed light on the shadow, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what this is. And
Yeah.
to be clear, karma are just the memories that you've accumulated, that you've attached emotion to, that have a charge.
Right.
So the point is to be able to understand that the memory is there, but once you take the charge out of the emotion, it no longer will have to trigger you. And that's where you, that feeling of neutrality, that place of just, you can choose to be at peace and happy regardless of what's going on in the outside reality, because you understand that it's coming in to help you grow and to help you recognize in yourself the patterns that are no longer serving you, the patterns that are keeping you in fear.
Right.
So Marconics, by once you get recalibrated, you become a negative ionic generator. And so just like a Himalayan salt lamp helps to neutralize the ions in the air,
Right.
you, just by showing up as the best version of you, create the ripples in the unified field that are allowing others to align to.
Yeah.
And through the process of entrainment, right, a higher frequency and a lower frequency, the lower frequency has to come up to meet the higher frequency.
Right.
You then become a light worker
Yeah.
just by showing up. And it's in the being and not the doing.
Right.
And so our mission, which originally started out as a redemption mission, is now being called the Maria de Salvo. It's the healing through the mother. As these magnetics are now available to us and you become a vibrational match to them, then as you start to spiral up the dimensionalized time cycle, right, and not just staying in this limited phase locked linear progression, you then are able to align with these higher templates.
Yeah.
And then others can follow.
Yeah, I feel that resonates very strongly with me. I feel like that's, you know, I'm surrounded by so many people with these very specific gifts, and I don't like to say I don't have those gifts. I think we all have those gifts.
We have the potential.
We have the potential of those gifts, and we just need to explore that. But I think that is my gift, is just showing up and being, and allowing for people to kind of just sit in that energy that is a little bit more grounded and aligned, and you know, just the presence of that, I think, helps people.
It
So.
definitely helps. And you know, everyone's not choosing the same.
Right.
You know, what we're saying is that there's, we're just trying to get everyone to align with the living light matrix. Because if you can align with the living light matrix, then you can return to your fifth dimensional time track when we were on Tara, on our way to seventh, or seventh on our way in Gaia, on our way to ninth in Aquinos. Then doesn't matter how long it takes. But if you're aligning with the Phantom Matrix, the AI human cyborg agenda, that cycle will just eventually phase out. It will dissolve, because that's just what it chose. That was inevitable. The 3D version of the planet is over. And she has chosen to go back into the higher realms for healing,
Right.
and to reunite actually with her twin. Mars is her twin in the fifth dimensional realm, and that is, it's very exciting to see what's being done on Mars, because
Sure.
again, that's what's happening. We're returning back to our new future,
Right.
which was our past.
Right. I love conversations that have a happy ending, especially when it comes to
A
humanity.
happy ending is again, you know, we don't judge it as it's a happy ending if you're choosing the organic ascension cycle.
Right.
There is the potential for that.
Right.
But we're losing light workers left and right because
Really?
they can't discern between the false light and the organic light.
So let me ask you a question. This is what I was going to ask you earlier, and playing the devil's advocate. So I don't want to upset you when I ask this, but
Never.
how do you know the information that you're getting is trustable?
Well, for me personally, I have been able to flex my discernment muscle from early on.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers and guides that I've had through my own evolution of my journey have always taught me to only communicate with me at the Godhead. I had an understanding of that. And through Marconics, it can feel very strong, the information. Like, for instance, originally I had thought that the Atlanteans were the technological, and that was the Lemurians that were the more heart-centered. And I've now discovered through Marconics that it's depending on what time track you are getting that information from, and I had to discern that through my own truth, that belief system. So for me, I just go back to the energy, because Marconics, the frequency of Marconics, when I'm running the energy or receiving it, it's undeniably the most powerful energy I've ever had the honor to work with. And I always go back to that. The energy is my GPS. It is. It just brings it back, because, like you said earlier, words. We're on in this realm. We depend on words, and because of the manipulation of the frequency, it can be distorted. But energy, that doesn't lie. Just like the universe, you can't lie to yourself anymore. Authenticity and integrity are the buzzwords now.
My favorite things.
Because you can say, just like you know how we speak to the dog. The words, you can say anything. They can smell like whatever, right? And you can just say it in a way that they feel the frequency of it, and it
Yeah, totally, absolutely. I mean, it's a great example. It's a great way to talk about. The words are meaningless.
They're meaningless.
It's energy and intention.
And so when you say, how do I know this is true? Because now that I've been involved with Marconics now for 9 years, and I've been on the path prior. I thought I knew, I was definitely educated about the ascension and 5G and all of it. It has humbled me to know that I'm still here, so I'm still learning, of course, but that this is my truth. I believe in this wholeheartedly, that there is a higher ascension. Now listen, everyone's ascending somewhere. You don't need to be conscious of that. It's happening whether you understand that or not. But choosing higher ascension, choosing that I am no longer going to come in and for this rinse and repeat, that I want to go home. I want to go back to my point of origin, where then I can then come back in as a true time traveler, to come in to different inception points as a light worker, do my mission work, and be able to return back without getting trapped again. That's what's going on here. And people are going to push back. When you read the books that Allison David Bird and Lisa Wilson wrote, who are the co-founders of Marconics, they share the story of how this came to be, and how they were asked to be Allison was asked to be the custodian of this frequency. And they're not here to be our gurus. They're here to help you become your own guru. And that really, that's why, channeling, and again, there's no judgment in it because
Right.
everyone's at a different place, and sometimes some people need to hear that.
Sure.
But we have to be able to discern between the imposter spirits
Right.
that are coming in, that are trying to prevent you from achieving what is now possible, or whether
Yeah.
you're going to succumb. With
No,
the
I
climate.
agree with that, and I hear what you're saying about channeling, and I've also been saying this too, is that to me, it's all the same thing, right? So when people talk about ETs, when they talk about angels, when they talk about all of these different things, like, yes, there's differences in the way that they're being perceived, but I think that that's the person who's perceiving them, and that's
But that's
because of
the problem.
the way that they understand
No,
it.
but that's also the problem because it's through their filter.
Right.
So the perception of it, the frequency of it, again, 9 truths and 1 lie.
Right.
And so if we're telling you that that was great when we were on a third dimensional, when we're all, on that plane.
Right.
But when 2012 hit, and then when 2018 hit with the bifurcation split, and then when 2020 hit with COVID, which then brought us onto a whole other timeline, right? We have to evolve with that. We have to go with the frequency of that. We have to be okay with letting go of those older tools. They were great until they're not.
Right.
And so they're fine for those that are aligning with that because they're behind us on the time track. But once they catch up to this inception point, if they have their spiritual maturity and the activated DNA, they too, just like myself, who used to use all those tools, will start to understand that it's, like with me, I was loved my tuning forks until
Right.
I heard, Robin, you are the tuning fork.
Right.
And you don't need it anymore. But
Right.
if my ego is out of balance and saying, well, that's how I present myself to the world, and that's my clientele, and how am I going to pay my bills if I don't have those clients?
Right.
And that's all fear-based thought.
Okay.
Then to know that once you let them go, and in my co-creation with the universe, it's going to open up a door that's going to bring a new set of clientele
Right.
that
That
aligns
makes
with,
sense. Sure.
right? Because there are tons of people doing Reiki
Sure.
that a very fine and honorable
Yeah.
part of the mission.
Right.
But if I am choosing higher ascension and I'm trying to help those that are also aligning with higher ascension, I have to make myself available to them.
Right,
So
right.
if I do both, then I'm lowering my frequency to meet the,
Interesting.
and so then it's affecting my choice of a higher
Right.
ascension.
Right.
And then my signal gets weakened. So
Interesting.
all of it is valid, and none of it's being judged.
Right.
It's just a matter of you having the
Coming
know-how
to that higher point. Yeah.
to be able to align with your choice.
Right.
What are you choosing?
Right.
I'm choosing not to stay. I'm
Right,
choosing to
right.
be able to get out and then come back in as a mission-based light worker if
Right.
that's where I'm needed.
Right.
That's what I'm
Sure.
choosing.
No, I get it. I get it. It's amazing the time that we're in, and I think all of the things that I like to explore, all of these conversations, they really help me navigate and kind of figure out where we're at. But the bottom line is, I still have to navigate the 3D. I'm still here.
Well, we
right,
have
with
to.
you.
That's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. We can't bypass that.
Right.
But imagine being able to navigate it in the frequency of love and
Yeah.
not making every choice and decision from the frequency of fear.
I try to live that way every day.
And that takes awareness.
Yeah.
And that takes, the higher states of consciousness.
Absolutely.
And it's it's onward and upward.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can't just stay here.
Yeah.
You need to be able to be willing to be able to go higher and start to see things from a different lens.
Yeah.
And some people like the complacency. They like to just stay
Right.
where it's safe.
Right.
And you can't stay where it's safe anymore.
Yeah.
You need to start to challenge yourself and notice what's going on there
Yeah.
and when it doesn't feel in alignment to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if people want to find out more about Marconics,
Yep, Marconics.com,
Okay.
Marconics. there's a slew of great videos on YouTube.
And what about
media.
you personally, if people want
Yeah,
to?
so I'm based in New York. I'm a master teacher of Marconics, and I am the master teacher for the entire Northeast Coast, and as well as teaching in Florida. And but we have teachers from around the world. We're not just in the United States. We're in Canada, the UK, Japan, Spain, and all across Europe as well.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm sure just a simple Google search, they'll be able to
Awesome.
find a match.
Awesome. You are awesome to talk to. It's fascinating to me, Marconics, the whole history of it and the idea of it. I'm fascinated with the human race and where we're going in consciousness, but this is a whole kind of new thing for me, and I love it. I love talking to you because you seem to, it's authentic, right? There's integrity. All of the favorite things are there, and I hope people resonate with it and connect with it. And I don't even want to say I hope everything works out for the planet, because for me, in my heart, I know everything works out at some point, and being a part of it consciously, being aware of it and trying to be a part of it is what I'm doing, and it seems like that's what you're doing too.
Yeah, we may not have faith in humanity, but we can certainly have faith in the universe.
Absolutely.
Because the universe will not allow a planet to be destroyed, because it will affect an entire, astral
It affects
galaxy.
everything. Yeah, everything's connected.
Everything is connected.
So, awesome. Well, thanks for being with me.
Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks. I'll see you guys soon. This is Michael Zinn for the live stream of consciousness.
This is the theme song for the live stream of consciousness. You gotta ask yourself whether reality is a dream or you a dream or reality. We are all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Come in and join us